The wind had died down, but its effects were everywhere. Trees uprooted, slates split, wires broken. Stephanie stepped out onto the porch. Billy, their son, was excitedly surveying the new disaster landscape and, panting with excitement, dragging his parents to the next site of destruction. As David surveyed the wreckage, Stephanie noticed a strange natural phenomenon not often seen in these parts. A mist began to descend from the mountain. They set off for town. The road to town was unusual this time. Military trucks loaded with equipment were hurriedly traveling in one direction. Project Arrow had long been the subject of urban gossip, but now that speculation was taking on a threateningly real tone. At the supermarket, things were moving along at a brisk pace. People were filling baskets, picking out ripe tomatoes and arguing about the best coffee. David and his son were just picking up their goods when suddenly police and fire trucks rushed down the street, sirens breaking the morning silence, warning of impending trouble. But the real panic began when old Dan Miller burst through the doors of the store. He shouted that something in the fog had grabbed his acquaintance and that he had barely escaped. One of the shoppers, ignoring the growing fear, rushed for the exit, hoping to get to his car in time. The fog engulfed everything around them, but soon they heard people screaming. Inside the store, frightened people were slamming the doors shut, retreating into the interior, as if the thin glass partition could protect them from the impending unknown. One shopper, pale and with trembling hands, exhaled that it might be a poisonous cloud released in an explosion at the factory. Suddenly one of the women spoke up. There were children left in her house. So she leaves, despite the risks. Those left behind come to their senses, others hastily check to see if the doors are locked. In the corner, Mrs. Carmody, shrouded in the aura of her own madness, exultantly raises her voice, proclaiming that Judgment Day has arrived. She declares that it is all over, only prayer will help them. Soon, however, the men notice that the exhaust pipe outside is clogged. Norm, brimming with confidence, decides to go out and deal with the problem. David desperately tries to talk him out of it, but receives only contemptuous chuckles. The door opens. At first nothing happens. But suddenly, tentacles burst out of the white mist with lightning-fast fury. They grab Norm and coil around him, wrenching him from the arms of his stunned comrades. Jim and Myron freeze, dazed with horror. David rushes to help, but the monster proves stronger. They warn the others that they are surrounded by monsters with tentacles. But everyone takes their words as a joke. They believe them only after they show them a stump with slimy growth. Laughter is replaced by silence, and then by desperate bustle. People rush to pile up the windows with anything they can get their hands on: flour sacks, shelves, crates of canned goods. Meanwhile, Mrs. Carmody does not miss an opportunity to rekindle her infernal bonfire of fanaticism. She goes on and on about the end of the world, the punishment of sinners, and the fact that God is sending creatures to cleanse the earth of its filth. A revolver turns up among the people. Amanda has one, but she doesn't know how to shoot. Without hesitation, she gives the gun to Ola, the only one who knows where to point the muzzle under the circumstances. The biker declares that he has a shotgun in his car and wants to get it, but he needs the others' help. They tie a rope around him, extra insurance. The biker walks out the door and disappears into the fog. A few seconds pass. The rope is pulled with such force that the three grown men can barely hold on to it. The men grab at it, straining their arms, but something at the other end pulls with monstrous force. The stunned survivors begin to slowly pull the rope back. Only half of the biker remains at the end of the rope. An oppressive silence reigns in the store. Even Carmody falls silent. Night falls. Insects the size of cats begin to crawl out of the fog. They cling to the windows, drumming their ugly wings on the glass. But that's just the beginning. Others come after them, huge, ugly, hungry. The glass cracks and shatters. The store becomes a battlefield. People are screaming, running, stumbling, grabbing whatever they can get their hands on. Big things grab those who are slow. Blood floods the floor. Olya raises her revolver and with a precise shot blows off the head of the monster that was about to devour David's son. Several of the creatures manage to set them on fire, and they wriggle in agony. When the carnage is over, they see many corpses. But more frighteningly, these events strengthen Carmody's position. People begin to whisper, remembering that during the day she predicted the night attack. She's gaining admirers. Some no longer look at her as a madwoman, but as a prophetess. One of the men is badly burned. He screams in pain, and David realizes they have no choice. There is a pharmacy a few meters away from the store and they need to get there. The group prepares to go to the pharmacy. David carefully selects people, realizing that this is a deadly venture. But Mrs. Carmody is against it, saying that such actions will only anger the heavens and bring more trouble upon herself. Her words are heated, and the crowd is divided. Some are afraid to take risks, while others realize that without medication, their chances of survival plummet. The survivors step out into the fog, trying not to make any noise, and make their way to the pharmacy. Upon reaching the building, they discover that the creatures have already been inside. Destroyed shelves, merchandise tangled in cobwebs, a sticky, smelly mass on the walls. The store doesn't seem so safe anymore. And that's not the worst of it. On the ceiling, in the corners, along the walls hang bodies, cocoons, within which the outlines of people slowly move. Some are still breathing, hoarse and weak, others are already dead. But most eerie of all is the web, permeated with pulsing eggs. The victims serve as incubators for something vile and alive. Suddenly the silence is broken by the sickening sound of cocoons bursting. From one of them crawls something with long legs, many eyes and a mouth full of needle-like teeth. Soon the pharmacy is swarming with spider-like creatures the size of dogs. Panic grips the group. People grab everything they can get their hands on, shelves, boxes, stomp on the nasty creatures, shoot back, but the creatures are faster. They grab one, and the screaming men are sucked into the web. Some fall, tangled in the sticky threads, and try to get out. 2 die before the others can get out. They return to the store exhausted, covered in cuts and cobwebs. Their faces are dead pale. But worst of all, one of them is completely broken. Mechanic Jims, not long ago a skeptic, now recites Mrs. Carmody's prayers with a tremor in his lips. He becomes her most devoted follower, and his fear spreads through the crowd like a contagion. People no longer listen to David. They look at him as a heretic, as the perpetrator of all evil. And then Carmody makes his move. The crowd, enraged and broken, demands blood. They find a scapegoat, Private Jessop. The soldier, one of those who knew about Project Arrow, becomes the object of hatred. The men pounce on him with knives, stabbing him, rage clouding their eyes. Mutilated, tortured, they push him out the door. Only the crunch of bones behind the glass of the window testifies to his agonizing death. Carmody is now the shopkeeper. In the eyes of the crowd, she is not a crazy old woman, but a prophet, the only one who understands the plan from above. Her influence becomes absolute. David and a few of his supporters realize, if they don't leave at dawn, the next victim will be among them. They prepare to flee, but the sectarians have no intention of letting them go. Mrs. Carmody smiles. She points to Billy, David's son. She orders the crowd to sacrifice him. But suddenly a gunshot rings out and Carmody falls. Taking advantage of the chaos, David and his group rush into the parking lot. The monsters immediately pounce on them. Screaming, flesh ripping, claws striking. Half the people are killed in seconds. The survivors continue to run without looking back. David, his son, Amanda, Mrs. Repler, and Mr. Miller rushed through the fog. When they pulled up to David's house, he realized he had to look around it. His heart was pounding in his chest, but hope, however tiny, compelled him to get out. Inside, however, a nightmare awaited him. His wife had already fallen victim to the spiders. There was an agonized silence on her face. But there was no time to grieve. They must move on. All they saw were dead people. Bodies lay everywhere. The earth no longer belonged to man. And then they saw the monsters. Huge, unimaginable, they moved slowly through the fog. They ran out of gas. They stopped in the middle of a silent void. No salvation, no hope. They resigned themselves to their fate with 4 rounds left in the revolver. One by one they met their fate, a quick, loud shot, then silence. Only David remained. He stepped out of the car, staggered, and raised his hand to the sky. He began to shout, calling for the monsters. But the fog suddenly began to clear. The military came into view. Columns of tanks, soldiers, flamethrowers, sizzling the remaining creatures. They were rescuing survivors. Among them was the same woman who had come out of the store at the beginning of the nightmare. David stared at them, disbelieving. He realized he had made the biggest mistake of all. He screamed. The scream, full of pain, regret and horror, echoed over the road where his dead companions remained. This is where the movie ends.